Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Untamed Leader podcast. My guest today is Savio P. Clemente. He is a keynote and TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and two-time cancer survivor. And as usual, I'm going to let him save the rest of getting to know him for the podcast today. Welcome, Savio.
Thank you so much, Lauri. I really appreciate that. So you mentioned most of what I do. I'm also a journalist and a best-selling author. And my work is really with healthcare leaders to regain clarity after high-stakes decisions, after so much disruption in the world right now, when the pressure has gone quiet, but it's also gone internal. And so that's where performance is either won or lost.
I love that. And I would love to ask you, when you hear the words untamed leader, what happens? What does it spark for you?
I see a lion, I see fire, and I also see deep emotion. For me, an untamed leader is someone who is not only taking the responsibility and helming the initiative, but someone that others look to not only for inspiration and motivation, which is important, but look for ways that they themselves live in the world. How they want to embody themselves and the work that they do, how they want to emulate their particular leader and how they go about their everyday business and life, and also how they integrate both personal and professional. I think we've all created these identities, and I think it's time in the world that we live in to have them meld.
So that we give ourselves the permission to be all of us, our true selves in all the places. And you also sparked this memory of my softball coaches when I was a child. There were times where they would say, "Do as I say, not as I do." And they did it in like a loving, a little bit more of the like, I'm human, so I make errors. Go for what I'm saying in terms of how you field the ball. And the leading of do as I say, not as I do, it really doesn't work as well as I'm embodying the change that I wish to see in the world to the best of my ability. So I'm not saying one thing and then doing another with my actions. And you sparked that for me as well.
Yeah, it's for me, as soon as you said that, there's a reason, especially in the lane that I'm in, where they say that doctors are great at what they do, but they make horrible patients because they themselves are not reflecting what it is that they are adopting or that they're saying. I think also we live in a world where maybe that could have sort of worked in the past, but not now, because people share, overshare. There's so much access. There's so much content. Then I think it's very important. And of course, as you know, these two words are overused, which is authenticity and presence. But I think those are not some things that we should dismiss. I think there's a reason why they're overused, because I think it's a call to action for all of us.
Yeah, those are two of my favorite words. And for a long time, I was using raw-authenticity instead of authenticity, because authenticity got so overused. And I thought about, well, what stops me from being authentic? How can I come up with a new word that kind of brings it back to life for me? And a lot of times in my case, it was when things didn't feel completed, or, there was a part of me who used to be more tamed and would show up looking like, I had it all pulled together. And I now know that's not at all what is interesting about me as a leader. I'm really good in chaos. And sometimes what that means is that I might be completely sobbing 1 minute right in front of the room that I'm doing something with, and then pick my head up after the tears and the snot and say, and it's all going to be okay. In fact, it's actually going to be even better. We're just in the painful part right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, I think it's not only a call to action, like I mentioned earlier, but I think it's also a clarion call, so to speak, to really who you are underneath this flesh and bone. Whatever your
Yeah.
belief system is, I don't care what it is, and do we have the same shared values? Because I think in a world of disruption, socially, politically, technologically, with AI, I think it's important for us to really take stock in the human aspect of ourselves.
Yeah. I love that. It's a calling forth, and it's also a call to be who we were born to be, to untame. We came in and then we got tamed or shoulded or tried to fit in, and then untamed leading and authenticity and presence are really about being who we were born to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your first leadership memory?
My first leadership memory is being the designated driver for my friends and I. I was still in high school, and I just was someone who didn't really like alcohol. I didn't really like the taste of it. And I wanted to make sure that everyone was taken care of. So I took on the responsibility. No one assigned it to me. And everyone knew that I would be completely responsible. Um, it didn't happen often, but when it did, I made
Mm-hmm.
sure that I valued human life, even though to a large degree, and this is getting into the nitty gritty of my own operating system, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
I always really, growing up, never really felt completely rooted.
Mm-hmm.
It's really what I speak in my TEDx talk about, this idea of the inner stranger. And to me, it
Mm-hmm.
was that individual who felt like a nomad, just felt like he just wasn't really. Yes, I had friends. Yes, I knew people. Yes, people knew me. Yes, I cared about the world. Yes, I cared about people, but I never really felt that I belonged, like fully belonged in a human sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first leadership because it allowed me to look beyond my own priorities. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a great leader is someone who looks not only at the mission and what needs to be accomplished, but who's bringing them to that accomplishment. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's humans bringing them to that accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just data, it's not just numbers, it's not just monetary value. It's actually people's time, energy, love, patience, sacrifice, blood, sweat, and tears that went into that.
Yeah. I love getting into the nitty gritty. And it's like as a teenager driving other people home, your mission was everyone gets home safe.
Absolutely.
And the thing that was the best choice to have that happen was you drive people home because you don't like the taste of alcohol.
Absolutely. And not only that, but I also didn't trust other people to do that. I didn't know how far they went that night, and I wasn't monitoring their intake of anything.
Yeah.
And I also felt to a large degree that even at such an early age, I knew about my own body autonomy. I knew
Mm,
that I would be no good to anyone if I myself was not able to understand my motivations, my drives, my compulsions, what lights me up, what dims my light. And
mm-hmm.
so I went on a search. I was always searching, really, at a young age. I don't think I articulated it as that, but I was on a massive understanding, a path, so to speak, of trying to really figure out what's it all about.
Yeah. How did that align with the feeling rooted and feeling like you belonged, that search?
Yeah. Believe it or not, it really was my cancer journeys. So I was diagnosed in 2014 with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I was in my late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it really was a visceral attack on myself because, yes,
Mm,
you can dismiss certain things, how I feel, my wanting, my needing, my displacement. That could all maybe be pushed under the rug, but I can't ignore a physical disease like cancer that's ravaging my body, and therefore I need medical intervention. I need
Mhm.
hospitalization. I need harsh drugs. I need other integrated modalities that I did use. I needed those things. And it was a wake up call, actually, Lauri, for me to really get physically rooted in it. I don't think, honestly, that I learned it fully until,
Mm.
unfortunately, my second bout, which happened a decade later.
Mhm. Was it kind of that spiral of learning where you learn part of it and then when you go through it again you realize, oh, I'm relearning and it is going deeper the second time?
That question is fantastic because it's what I was actually thinking to articulate before you asked it. I truly believe now, having been a two-time cancer survivor, thankfully, even after the relapse, through science, medical science, stem cell transplant, and also, once again, a whole bunch of integrated modalities beyond just medicine. I'm talking about internal family systems work and ecstatic dance and all that. I've come to the understanding that healing is not linear. It never was.
Mm.
Healing is highs and lows, ins and outs. It's just not one way, one size fits all. And not only that, but I actually don't look at time as linear as well. I look at it as a spiral, as you said.
Mm.
So
Mm.
whatever the juxtaposition is, whatever the reflection of it is, whatever the mirroring of it is, it's for me to understand and maybe not understand fully because I don't know if all of us, we don't get graded
Mhm.
on this as we go along. We just do the best we can in our work, best we can as parents, if you're a parent, best we can in relationships. And so for me, I look at it as an opportunity, a harsh, a real guttural one. I don't want to minimize what I've been through because since my relapse in June of 2024, a decade later, I've actually lost 8 people to cancer. And for some of them, it was their first go around.
Mm.
So I'm not trying to minimize that. It is painful. It is harsh. I had side effects. I had to do various amounts of recovery, up to 16 months of recovery. But I will say that it afforded me an ability to not only go deeper, which is what really I think all human experiences calls us to, but
Mhm.
it gave me the ability to actually take time in silence and stillness. Because in
Mm.
my stem cell transplant, it was 29 days in the hospital in a quarantine room. Yes, they would come for vitals. Yes, the doctors would make their rounds. But that's all I had, Lauri. I had silence and
Mm.
stillness. And I was able to
Mm.
dig so deep into that that actually I realized that there's a difference between Savio, the physical person who's suffering, who's attached to all these machines, and something much greater than even myself, that even that I could even fathom to articulate in this life.
You ended with couldn't even fathom to articulate. And the question that was brewing in my mind was for people that have not had any experience with there's something deeper than my body, there's something other than my body, there's something other than my job, there's something, you are not your car. There's that song, you are not your car. You are. How would you begin to describe to someone who's never thought about that what you found when you sank into yourself and into the silence and the stillness?
Well, we all heard back in the day that intellect was like the number one trait to have. And then we were like, no, no, no. Emotional IQ is the number one trait to have. And of course, that is true. But the research points to metacognition. And I didn't know, I knew the word, I knew what it was. Metacognition is the thinking beyond the thinking. It's who is that identification, Savio, versus the things that are happening to him. How is he thinking about the thinking itself?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, if I was to actually speak to someone, and like I said, mine is a medical malady. It doesn't have to be so serious. It could be a heartbreak, a job loss, losing your home, being homeless, whatever is that life is presenting to you that is to some degree feels very unfair. I think the number one key is to really identify for yourself what is happening in this moment. What is truly, truly, how can you be so present to the moment that's happening? I'm not talking about the fear. I'm not talking about the pain. I'm not talking about the angst. I'm not talking about the anger. And I'm definitely not talking about the sadness. I'm talking about what is reality showing you at the moment, and you having to figure out for yourself, how do I go forward? Not a leap forward, but an inch, a tiny toe forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key, I think, that life is trying to show all of us, including myself.
Yeah. And we were trained, something that you said a while ago made me think, we were trained that there was one way to go, and it was a linear path. And almost, I don't really know anyone where it's been a purely linear path. It can look like it from a distance. If somebody's growing and transforming, it can look like they're going perfectly up and to the right. And in reality, what's happening is much more of a curvy path that looks like they knew what they were doing the whole time. And it's the intellect being prized over everything else that created the impression or the advice that you just do this, followed by this, followed by this, and you move forward, and it's all steady and predictable. And it really is not that for anyone. And metacognition, I have heard that phrase recently, and my yoga perspective on it would be that there is a part of us that is noticing the thinking of the thoughts. And that's beginning to tap into the highest levels of consciousness. There is a part of us that notices the sensations going on in the body, or notices the emotions that we're having, that emotional IQ, those are great things. And the part of us that notices all of those other things is about to be studied, being studied more and more.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most of this is really about not only presence, as we mentioned earlier, and this idea of self-regulation. Like, Lauri, seriously, can I really control my platelets, my red blood cells, my white cell? I can't do that. So what could I control that those 29 days in the hospital? I can control my attitude. I can control how I related to the healthcare workers. I could actually meet when they did rounds. I could muster the energy and the courage to meet them in full presence, explain what's going on, and actually verbalize, because we're a team. We're working together towards my recovery. It's not just them doling out their advice. I used to always say before my relapse that doctors would be seen as like the Wizard of Oz, the Oz, like, okay, whatever you say, I lay all my power to you. But that's not the dynamics of healing. I'm telling you this from a 2-time cancer survivor. The dynamics of healing is the ability to submit, the ability to surrender, the ability to allow. And if you allow that, so for example, I reframed my chemo. I didn't think of it as poison and all that. Now, granted, this is my second go around with it. Even back then, I didn't. I actually said to myself, this is an elixir. This is like mana from the universe. This is something that's given to me. It's engineered biologically, scientifically engineered to do its job. Yes, it does its job pretty voraciously. I mean, it does its job and it ravages. That's just the truth. And it does have massive side effects that are very painful. And for most women, especially the ones that I've interviewed at this point before my relapse, 200 cancer survivors, different walks of life. And most of the women were like, my hair, because their hair was a part of not only their identity, but a part of what made them feel special. And when you rip that away, the way cancer does rip that away, it's very hard to swallow. So I'm not trying to minimize that, because it is very, very painful. But the fact of the matter is, to some degree, you have to allow the process to unfold, because if you don't and you resist, you don't allow the full unfolding. We all don't know what the end result of our lives will be. But what we do know is that in the moment that there's pressure, there's anxiety, there's overwhelm, I think it behooves us to take a beat, to take a moment, try to integrate, and try to figure out for ourselves, how can I regulate in this maelstrom of crisis.
Yeah, the things that you are illustrating for us through your cancer journey, I see like that is part of living as a human on the planet, particularly if you're a human who is living, who does believe that part of what we're here to do is be a spiritual being having an experience in a human body, where growing and learning or unlearning to come back home to ourselves is part of the journey. I have not had cancer, knock on wood. I have had moments, like you said, where I got knocked down and I could try to keep gripping onto life with the illusion of I can control something here, to realizing and accepting I don't have control over what the situation is. I do have control over how I choose to face the situation. And you're talking about it so eloquently now. I'm wondering, was it challenging for you, particularly the first time?
So the first time, I didn't really think about, I knew death could have happened because the medical director actually came to me. I was in the hospital that first time for 15 days. 2 days before I left, she said, you have to start your first round of something called R-CHOP chemotherapy. At that point in my life, not that I was anti-medicine, I just didn't need it. I didn't even take aspirin, to be honest. I only saw a naturopath yearly who analyzed my blood, gave me information about vitamins to take and various diet structures. And she said, if you don't start this, I don't know where you're going to end up. I'm like, really, doc? And she's like, yeah. And so a flash came before me from the movie, and you might have seen it, called The Little Buddha, starring Keanu Reeves. And he played Siddhartha. He played the little Buddha. And he basically gave up all his worldly possessions. And he lived with, I think, two ascetics at the time. They were meditating. And he heard two individuals on a fishing boat. And one of them says, if you hold the string too tight, it'll snap. And if you hold it too loose, it won't play. The path is the middle way. And it was like a light bulb moment. I'm like, oh, so I can do this quote unquote chemo treatment, but I can do other things when I get out of the hospital. And so I chose to do that because that was my body autonomy. But I wasn't really afraid of dying. I think, Lauri, honestly, I was more afraid that I didn't live up to my potential, that I didn't do what I came here to do. None of us gets the full report card of what we need to accomplish or our classes, so to speak. But I felt like I was disappointing myself or disappointing others because I didn't get to do those things. And I don't mean from a professional monetary perspective. I meant from what is life energy? What did I come here to contribute to the world? What did I come here to understand of the world? And so that was really my main angst. I grew up with a Catholic faith. I was even an altar boy in Catholic elementary school. But in college, I knew I had to search out other things. So I studied everything from Buddhism, Jewish mysticism, all the way to Vedic philosophy. And so for me, even back then, I just knew that life was showing me something, and I had to make the most of what it was showing me, even though the path towards that might be really grim and dark. I knew I had to actually face it. And so just fast forward into my relapse in June of 2024, there was a moment I was having, this might be a little TMI, but I was having massive diarrhea issues. And I just remember literally, I think it was my like seventh time during the day having to go to the restroom and just thinking to myself, is this how it's going to be? So of course I was scared. And this is the misnomer that most people think. They think spiritual beings are what we know of them. And I think I can disclose this to you just from my own understanding and research, that even someone as grand and as lauded as someone like Jesus of Christ, even he trembled. Even he asked for the cup to be passed from him. And so I think people forget, and they think only the strong people are able to. No, that's not what strength is. Strength is actually facing it and going through it. And so as I was going through it, it was hard. It wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yeah, you get strong from going through it and choosing courage or choosing whatever you want to call it to get back up one more time. I had this impression of my mother when she was around. She really appeared to the outside to be one of the strongest, most grounded, nothing can phase her people on the planet. And shortly after she passed, I started speaking to my brother more, who is 10 years older than me, and we had not had that strong of a relationship. To say that we had a family with some black sheep in it is, in many ways, an understatement. And when I was talking about her and how strong she was and how grounded she was and all of that kind of stuff, he said, "How do you think she got that way? She had to deal with me. That's what trained her." And I went, "Oh," and it sort of reframed that it's not like someone was born stronger or different. They got grown into that, and have also had some people in my life now look at me and they're seeing me doing something in a circumstance when I'm leading, and they think I look like them. They're going, "God, I want to strangle this person." And they think that I'm the picture of peace and groundedness. And a short while ago, I turned to one of them and I said, "Let me tell you what it actually feels like on the inside." Because I know the first time I heard this about someone that I thought was just serene Buddha, born that way, I said, "I feel like a match that's been lit on fire sometimes on the inside. I'm breathing. I'm staying present. I'm generally not choosing to speak from that fire. There's always a, what's the vision? Where are we attempting to head? Is there anything that I can say in this moment that will improve on the situation or like turn us back toward that place that we're attempting to head?" But it doesn't feel on the inside like it's looking like on the outside to you. You're seeing the actions. Sometimes I feel like a human match where, and that is what is growing me. Then the match gets less and less intense because I'm not like amplifying that feeling in myself with the choices that I'm making. I'm choosing to go toward the vision rather than go into the drama, or as much as possible, respond from my highest self. As I'm saying this to you, I will also say there was a moment once when I was heading to a yoga class on a Sunday. I was so excited to be going to this yoga class. And I drove, and there was a place to park where it said Monday through Saturday, only loading and unloading. But Sundays, you could park there. I'm so proud of myself. I noticed the sign. I parked there, and this gentleman who owned like a body shop that was there came out and started screaming at me and telling me to move my car. And at first, I was like, if you'll look at the sign, it actually says on it's Sunday, it's the Sunday yoga class. And I stayed centered, stayed centered, stayed centered. But even though I was staying pretty centered, it was like there was a part of me that was looking for him to give me his blessing to park there, to agree with me. And I was not going to get that. And eventually I just lost it and like, whew, and yelled something back like, "If you have a problem with it, then take it up with the city. I'm late for yoga." So now I'm running into yoga and I'm like, I'm late. I don't have the spot that I want in yoga. And it took, I don't know, 5 minutes into the class of them be present in your body and start the yoga class to actually start bawling. And it was, maybe I would have been tearing up a little because of the energy that he shot at me. But telling it to you right now, I believe it was more that I ended up adding to it by, instead of just going, "Hey, there's a part of you that's trying to get him to give you permission to park in a place that the sign has already given you permission. You are not going to change his perspective on this situation. So just namaste and leave. If I could go back in time, I probably would have literally just said namaste and not even tried to say the thing about the city and take it up with that, you know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because to me, what jumps out is this idea of self-regulation, right? We alluded to it before, and people are like, well, you're so regulated. And I'm like, yeah, it's part of my job, but really it's a work in progress. I'm just like you, just different, you know, in different level or different area of life. And people are like, well, how do you do it? I'm like, do it whatever comfortable for you. Prayer, meditation, breathing, journaling, taking a brisk walk in silence, whatever allows you to create that psychological distance from the problem that you're having, not disconnection, not disassociation, but that buffer really allows you to come to your own. And then something else that you said as well, my dad, thankfully he's still with us. He's 86 years old, and he was complaining a few months ago about, I just think the age thing. And I'm like, why are you focusing on the age thing? I said, thankfully, you have a little bit of medical issues, nothing debilitating. You should be grateful for that. But beyond the gratefulness of that, I said, because my dad, you know, grew up Catholic, and so I made a reference to Moses, and I'm like, did you know Moses started his mission at 80? And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, he started his mission at 80, and according to the Bible, he lived to 120. Said he could have just said, I'm not interested in taking on this mission at 80. I'm too tired. My bones are brittle or whatever. But he chose. He made a choice, and I think that's what life in general is trying to get us to do, is to make choices, and hopefully they're
Yeah.
positive choices.
And you reminded me that the first cancer go around, part of what happened for you is that you had the feeling that you had a mission that you had not fulfilled. Tell us a bit more about what happened in your mission between round 1 and round 2. And then also, you know, how did round 2 deepen or call you into a different mission or the same mission in a different way?
So 2014, I'm someone who's okay with making pivots in life when life shows you the way to go. Like when you intrinsically know, it's just like, no one can tell you, it's just something you feel. And so at that moment in life, I was actually working with 3 other individuals. We had a production company, and let's just say I gave my blood, sweat, and tears, and also my financial resources to it, and it just wasn't working. It just wasn't working. There was things happening within the organization that I had no control over, and so we ended up disbanding. And it was around the time that my cancer happened. So even though I was doing everything right health wise, like I was eating organic food and and I was working out 6 days a week, and I was meditating, and there was also professional pressures happening. And I'm not saying that was the cause of the cancer. I'm just saying that was the reality of the situation. And so that actually forced me to make a huge pivot, to take my cancer and the situation that happened to me and make something from it. But however, I was nervous. I wanted to wait 5 years because they kept saying after 5 years, it's extremely less likely to come back. And so I waited 5 years while still germinating this idea. And so that was something that really allowed me to get my board certification. At the time, I was always a writer, so I just leveled up on that. I had a podcast that I launched in around that same time. And I just garnered the courage, because I think it takes courage to make huge pivots like that. And then since then, I was in remission for a decade, and then unfortunately came back. I leaned in more into speaking, my leadership role, in working with leadership leaders in general, but this idea of what is actually leadership, especially in the healthcare industry. And so that allowed me to tell not only their stories, but to look to see what are the gaps, the missing gaps, what I call the post-crisis leadership gap. Like people often assume that the crisis is what we need to handle, but no, it's really what happens after the crisis, when the performance stops and we need to reorientate ourselves and figure out the next way forward. And so those are the things that happen.
What is essential to leadership for you?
So I'll give you a great example. So as a journalist, I get some pretty great assignments, but my beat is really leadership, healthcare, wellness. But my editor asked me before my relapse, this was um, early 2024, and he's like, I have an assignment for you. I'm like, okay. He's like, do you want to go to cover the Oscars red carpet? I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I did it. And one thing I realized is when I was there surrounded by all the other publications and they would come, I realized they were still acting, Lauri. I realized they were acting for me because they wanted to put good face. They had an armor on. They were acting for their handlers, their managers. They're acting for the photographers. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, the coach in me, the speaker in me, the journalist in me sees through this. And no offense, I get it. But I tell you that story because leadership to me is not only authenticity and presence, which is very important, but I think it's this ability to have shared values with one another. And I think in a world where AI is challenging the status quo, so to speak, I think it's important for us humans to rise up and to realize not only our connection with one another, but our actual physical humanity with one another, our shared disappointments, our shared joys, because AI can never replicate that experience. And it'll if you ask it, it'll tell you, I'm not human. I don't know what that feels like or that would be like, but I can tell you XYZ.
I love that. I love that. And I do theater. I have a background. I grew up in beautiful downtown Burbank, California, actually, and wanted to, I used to practice my Oscar speech as a child. And then in college, started doing live theater, and somewhere in my 30s, started to actually get good at it. And I'm part of a theater company now that is, we do all our theater in a teeny tiny little basement, and we love it. And we just rewrote our mission statement to align with where we are now. And the kinetic connection live in the same space between the performers, intimate kinetic, like you can reach out and touch an actor from almost any front row or side seat at different times. You made me appreciate that even more, because AI, like at this point, sadly for the actors in LA, there are AI performers possibly coming for your roles. I don't think they can hold a candle even on film to an actual person who is present in their body and letting the camera in an intimate way. And AI is really far from being able to do that in our teeny tiny little basement theater. There's nothing that can make up for that kinetic interplay between the performer and the audience and the shared imagination that happens in that space. And that is our little theater company. And it's also all of humanity.
Well, there's a resonance that it can't articulate. I mean, there's a signal and a pattern that it can't emulate. And don't get me wrong, I am a proponent of it because I look at it as just a tool, just a tool. I don't look at it as replacement or displacement. I look at it as the consciousness behind it, just like money, just like fire, use it for good or bad, however you want to use it. And those individuals who are what I call purist journalists, some of them have actually expressed to me, I'm part of a group, and they're like, I actually feel guilty using it. And I'm like, no. Anytime you use the word guilt, no matter what it is, it's not a good thing. You need to search. You need to, as Yoda would say, search your feelings. You need to search and figure out for yourself why you're using that word, because that's not a good word to use in any context. But it's a process. It's a journey for everyone. I just know for myself, I know what I will use it for and I will not use it for. And I know that it's allowed me to become a better communicator and a better individual who can understand context and content. I think those things are a little different. to different people, because you can mean something and intend something, but it doesn't always carry across. And AI is very good at trying to give you one linear view of what the answer should be. But that's not the way us humans work. We work on body language, we work on energy, resonance, signal, pattern. So that's the thing that's complicated.
Yeah. I have one final question for you. And then the question, and this is going to seem a little bit out of left field. You did a TED Talk, and then you mentioned that the places that you're wanting to speak to take your voice these days are different. And I feel like one of the places where the world tells you there's only one way and it's a hierarchy is in the speaking industry, air quotes. That the way the traditional world does it is there's a ladder. There's one ladder. At the top of the ladder is the TED Talk. Shortly underneath that is keynotes. And everything else is just what you do on the way to try to get up that ladder. And everybody in the speaking industry is fighting for space on the one ladder that exists in humanity. And in reality, I see leadership speaking as much more of a landscape where there isn't only one way. What's called you to open it up from TED Talk to TED Talk and beyond?
I think it's what I actually said in my TEDx talk, which is called 7 Minutes to Wellness, How to Love Your Inner Stranger. People are like, inner stranger. I think it's the ability, and the first thing that I say as soon as I open up the talk, which is, have you ever looked into a mirror and not recognized the person reflected back at you? It was such a question that I asked, and I know it caused some consternation and some cognitive load in people, but I did that consciously and purposely. And I do agree with you that there are these sort of ladders, so to speak, in speaking. And I think leadership really encompasses not just the corporate side of what people assume leadership to be, but the actual nuts and bolts of what leadership is. What is leadership? Leadership is, once again, allowing people to see you and how you go about your day to day, your business life or your professional or personal life, and allow people to then mirror that into their own so that they can fashion it and shape it the way it needs to be. And so I know I tell people all the time that there's a mini framework that I use in the TEDx talk called the Aloha Reboot, which basically means A, acknowledge where you are, listen, L, O, open yourself up, H, harness, and A, act upon those things. And it's just aloha in Hawaiian means hello. So it's just hello to your inner self. And I think the more that we get good on not ignoring what our bodies and our minds are actually speaking and saying to us, and less focused on what the external world is telling us that we need to do or who we need to be or who we need to emulate, I think the better we'll be able to choose paths for us that are far more enriching. I mean, no one's telling you that you can't have fun. Just have fun with some boundaries.
I love that. If our listeners are leaning in and really wanting to go deeper with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on my website. So Savio P Clemente, SAVIO CLEMENTE. On there, there's my keynote work. There's my TEDx talk. And also every Wednesday, I post a Substack newsletter called The Human Resolve, where I talk about the head, heart, and gut intelligence. Also my interviews that I've done with leaders and celebrities as well. And then if they want to find me on social media, I'm at every platform at The Human Resolve, because Lauri, resolve is the only thing we have left.
Love it. All right. Now it is time to slide into our Pivo pivot. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Distance.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
All three, I would say it's the ability to transform.
What turns you off?
Judgment.
What's your favorite cuss word?
FUCK.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh God, this is so bad. A crying baby. Incessantly, a crying baby crying incessantly. So I should clarify.
Clarify.
A crying baby crying incessantly for no reason, but just to cry, it drives me crazy.
That drives you crazy. What profession other than yours would be fun to try?
A chef.
Ah. And what profession would you not like to do?
Oh, I definitely could not be a surgeon. No way. I watched The Pit on HBO and I'm like, oh, I don't know how people do it. God bless you. My nervous system is a wreck. I would not be able to function. I'd be truthfully honest with you. Not be able to function.
And Savio, what do you hope people say about you on your 100th birthday?
That he mattered in my life.
Thank you. Well, you mattered in my life. I know you matter in a lot of people's lives and the lives of the people who will eventually hear this podcast. Thank you so much for joining and sharing so openly today.
Thank you, Lauri. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And if you are listening and this touched you in some way, please like it, rate it, share it, tell a friend, follow it, subscribe, all those things so that we can pass the pulse of conversations like this to even more people. And I will see you back here next time.